welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. The Nippies.
That's a good one.
That was Milkies and Nipple combined into one word. And that is the name of my new company, Nippies. I don't know what we sell yet, but Milky's Nipple Nurture Balm is your organic and lanolin-free answer to sore or cracked nipples, and it's also quite a mouthful. Today's episode is also brought to you by Sarah's Chill, a company that never stops making the lives of breastfeeding parents easier. And we will hear more from our sponsors later, but they make this podcast possible. So if you ever need anything, please head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our sponsor page. See if you can give them any of your business. While you're there, you can scroll down and enter your email address, and we will send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are also on Patreon, and we are having a blast over there. And we hope that you will join us there for our extra ad-free episodes, our mini podcasts, our Zoom hangouts. You can head to the link in the top of the show notes, wherever you're listening from, and find a description of all of the benefits and stuff. And shout out to Rudy G and Ashley H for joining us over there. And we hope to see you. And we are still holding our ongoing giveaway. I just got an email that said, "Are you still doing this?" We are still doing this. If you leave a review anywhere on the internet, a written review, stars, whatever you can do on whatever app you listen to, send us a screenshot to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com. And we will send you a goodie bag of stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards. We are still doing that. You can send it over. People are doing it. We're sending them out. Dianne sends out bags.
Yeah. I have lots of stickers. So,
oh God, Dianne is like a sticker obsessed. So
I am kind of sticker obsessed. Jeez. People, don't make my stickers habit be in vain. I know. Come get the stickers.
She's going to hoard the stickers if you don't come and get them. Yeah, okay. And now our favorite hoarder has our review of the week.
I do. This is a little long, but I love it. So this podcast is amazing. My baby and I had a very difficult start with breastfeeding, tongue tie, lots of pain with nursing, even post-release and after working with a lactation consultant, and did not take a bottle. And I wish I'd known about this podcast then. However, I am so glad we eventually figured it out and I found this podcast. I am still nursing my 16-month-old, and I feel confident that this podcast will help any future nursing relationships go so much smoother, or at least with so much less anxiety. My number one piece of advice for any friends wanting to breastfeed is to get info for a lactation consultant to have ready when the baby comes. My second piece of advice is this podcast. The information provided is gold. Update. I nursed my first baby until just before their second birthday. I just had my second baby, and my postpartum experience has been so much better, partially because I know so much more thanks to this podcast. I have so much less anxiety because I know what is normal newborn stuff. We had great nurses in the hospital, but many of them very new and uneducated about breastfeeding. Thanks to this podcast, I wasn't at all worried about their comments and my baby nursing frequently because they aren't getting enough, or about how they are still losing weight, because of course they are on day 2. I had Abby and Dianne cheering me on in my head and giving me confidence. 5 out of 5 stars would recommend. Thank you so much. I love hearing about the 16-month-old and then now the new baby. And you are right. The first piece of advice, and we say this all the time too, get a lactation consultant. Have one ready to go. Meet with one prenatally if you can. It just makes so much sense, and it really is so, so helpful. I met with somebody prenatally the other day, and it was just to kind of answer some questions and meet each other and, what do I do from here kind of a thing. It is so helpful. It is so helpful. So, you can do that. Find yourself a lactation consultant. And if there's, if you don't have one near you, if you live in an area where you can't find one, there's lots of them virtually. So definitely find one. I always meet with people too. And if you're already had your baby and you feel like you need one, definitely find yourself one. Because it is important to your breastfeeding relationship. We don't expect you to, have any other, we don't expect you to go without any other specialist. That's how I wanted to say that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So don't go without this one.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sending that in for us. And good luck with baby number 2.
Yeah. Congrats.
Yeah. And today we're going to talk about feeding in the first few days. And she hit the nail on the head with one of the things that I was going to talk about, which was the weight stuff. But we will get to that eventually. But yeah.
Those first few days, man. Woo.
I know. And I can't remember why I was thinking about this, but it might have even come from doing that prenatal recently. I was like, hey, we should talk more about, those first few days, because I think we skip over that a lot. Or we just kind of glaze over it, just going to go, oh yeah. But we tend to talk more about problems that people get into as their breastfeeding relationship is going.
Yeah.
We don't really.
As we know, the way you get started kind of sets the stage for what comes.
Absolutely.
And when you start off with, not a lot of information, which most of us do, I certainly did. It's the whole, then it just becomes then it's just months of dealing with that.
My information was to counter everything my mother said with the opposite thing. That was my information. That's what I did. She said one thing, I would say, no, that's not right. And just do the opposite. Yep. Because I was like, well, how does she know? She didn't breastfeed. And, it's been 30 years since she had a baby. So why would she know anything about this? But that's where we tend to get a lot of our information from. People that don't really know, that are just kind of spouting out information. Things all right, so stuff my mother said to me was
stuff my mother said. Ooh, that should be an episode.
That should be an episode.
Stuff my mother said. Everybody send in the crazy shit that your mom said to you about breastfeeding.
Yeah, we won't say your names, I promise.
No.
But one of the things that she said to me was, how can you make milk? You don't even drink milk.
She was talking about cow's milk too, probably.
Yeah, of course.
How can you possibly make milk? You do not drink the breast milk of a bovine.
Right. So it was stuff like that, and this milk looks spoiled. It's fine. Pumped milk. I was like, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But that's where I got my information from. I didn't know anything. And then I was starting to read a little bit more once I kind of got into it. But spoiler alert too, I hated breastfeeding in the beginning. And I tell people that all the time. I hated it because I think people feel really guilty if they don't like it. And it's okay if you are struggling with it. It really is okay. Nobody's going to judge you. At least we won't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. It's hard and you're tired and your body hurts and your nipples hurt and everything you feel so needed. And it's just give me a second to breathe. And it just feels so overwhelming. And, it can feel really hard. And I think we always just kind of assume it's our cross to bear that we have to love it. And you don't. Right. It took me probably, I don't know, a month or two before I really was okay with everything.
Yeah. And it's usually about things going well.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually they start off with lots of problems.
Right.
And who's going to like that? Nobody likes that.
No. Because you just don't know. Right. And how many times do people say, I mean, I know I've heard a million times when people come to see me, they're always like, yeah, I thought, having the baby was going to be the harder part. I thought feeding would be easy. I hear that all the time. Thought feeding would be the easier part. This is harder than having the baby.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it. So in the first couple days, so let's talk about when the baby is first born. So whether you're at the hospital or at home, depending on where, or at a birth center, wherever you had your baby, there's a couple things that are pretty consistent either way. That your baby's going to be pretty sleepy. That's just normal. Babies that are more awake and alert and this has been my experience both from working with babies in the hospital and even with home births, and from a lot of research that I have done, is that babies that have had an unmedicated delivery are a little bit more alert than babies that have not. So if you have had a medicated delivery, and there's no problem with that. I'm not saying don't do it. All I'm saying is that those babies get the medication too. I mean, the medication that's going to you, and you might feel a little groggy and sleepy too, especially if it was a C-section. Expect your baby to be a little groggy and a little sleepy as well. And it's totally normal and it's fine. Plus, they just endured a lot. They're going to be a little bit sleepy. But we always want those babies to go skin to skin right away, if possible. If everybody's healthy and everything's good, skin to skin right away for as long as possible, and then feeding within the first hour. Now, I saw a baby at home. It was a home birth. I saw them the first day and I know the family, and they contacted me. It's like, the baby was born at like 7:00 this morning. Can you come over today? I was like, oh my God. So I did have a window of time where I could pop over. So I went over there, and the baby, it was like 6 hours and the baby hadn't been to breast yet. Like, they had tried, but he just really wasn't that interested and really just wasn't doing much. And I'm like, have you been doing skin to skin? And she goes, the midwife said I didn't really have to. And I was like, oh. I was like, no, do lots of skin to skin. I don't know where that came from. Like, I don't know what the conversation was prior to that.
Right.
Maybe the midwife thought because it was a very long, like 4 hours of pushing kind of birth. It was very long. And maybe the midwife just figured she needed to get a break.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, let's do lots of skin to skin. And he ended up latching and is, doing very well. But he was so alert. Like, he was very very with it and alert, just not very interested in nursing. But he was fine. He didn't shrivel up. He didn't turn into a raisin. He didn't, lose too much weight, nothing like that. And he went, a good couple of hours before feeding, before he actually fed. Mm-hmm. But in the hospital, they are going to encourage that baby to eat pretty frequently and pretty much within the first hour. And it's kind of one of those things where they're checking blood sugar, and the nurses want to make sure the baby is eaten. And so they can kind of like check that off as being, okay, the baby ate kind of thing. So every couple of hours in the hospital, they're going to recommend that that baby goes to breast, and really like keeping that baby skin to skin as much as possible is ideal. This is a huge transition for your baby. I mean, we want them to be where they're going to be comfortable and feel safest. And that's like right on you. Attached to you. And if it can't be you, they should be right on your partner, skin to skin with both of you.
And then, sorry,
go ahead. No,
but like, how, we have breasts to the side and there's a space in between. Like, that's literally why we are made like that.
For your baby fits.
To have a space for the baby. That's why this is all designed that way. Not to fit into like a bra. Yeah. I mean, that's nice and everything, but it's literally made that way so your baby fits right there.
I know, it's perfect. It's perfect.
It's like we were made for a reason.
Imagine that. But we were. And it wasn't for sexual reasons.
Right, either. Exactly. No.
So the other thing you should expect is some cluster feeding, usually on day 2 of the baby's life. So either on day 2 of the baby's life or the first night home, whichever comes first. And, because people are getting out of the hospital pretty quickly now, going home after 24 hours, that kind of thing. But usually like the first night home is usually the worst. And that is because they do a lot of cluster feeding. That's a lot of overstimulation, right? Like if you had your baby in a hospital or a birth center or something like that, you got the baby dressed, you put them in a car seat, drove them home. Now they're home. There's new lights, new sounds. Maybe you have pets, maybe there's company there waiting for you. lots of stuff happening. And that's a lot of overstimulation for a little baby. So those babies tend to be a little bit more like, I need to be with my mother right now. And they tend to do a lot of cluster feeding on those nights. And that is perfectly normal. We expect it. And usually and if you're in the hospital and it's day 2, usually we see that cluster feeding on day 2. The other thing they're doing is like bringing your milk in too. Like there's a purpose to the cluster feeding. There's a reason that it's happening. It's not just to annoy us and to make us crazy, which it does, and we do have an episode on cluster feeding, but, they're also bringing your milk in because, right now, those first 2 or 3 days of your baby's life, they're feeding on colostrum, which is all they need. They don't need anything else. Colostrum has everything that they need. But the more that they nurse and the more they stimulate your supply, the more your milk is going to come in, the faster your milk is going to come in. So let your baby cluster feed. Let them bring your milk in sooner.
Yeah,
it's all good.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, it's okay, it's fine, just let it happen. It's like, no, this is what we want to see. This is what we want your baby to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly what they're designed to do, what you're designed to do. And, I know we all have things to do. We have things to do, but you don't have anything to do except sit there and nurse your baby.
Yeah, that's all that's expected.
Your job right now.
It's all that's expected. And a lot of people will ask, like, well, how long is the baby nurse for? Like, what should I expect as far as like how long they're going to feed for?
Oh, when they're forever.
I know, right? When they're first born, like in that first, the first few days, especially, babies are tired. They are figuring out their coordination. They're figuring out how to suck, swallow, and breathe and make all of that come together in order to eat. Like that's a lot of coordination for a little baby. They're figuring that out. They're using all these new muscles that might be tight. They might be sore. They might be, there's a lot happening there. So those feeds in the very beginning can be a little bit longer sometimes, before your baby actually like conks out and is done. So you might see that feed last like 45 minutes. And that's like, they'll suck a couple times, they'll pause, they'll take a little break, they'll breathe, and they'll suck a few more times. This is really, really typical and normal for your baby. They are figuring out what to do, and it takes them a little time. If the more they do it though, the better they get at it, just like anything else. They're practicing. And that's what we're going to see them doing in those first few days of life. And then as they get better at it and better at it, they become more efficient at it. And then it takes them less time. So the goal is that your baby, because long feeds are not good feeds as your baby gets older. In the very beginning, long feeds are normal because they're learning. But after the first 2 weeks, feeds should not take half an hour. Feeds should be pretty short. They should be maybe, and don't time this because timing is bad. But I definitely don't want to see feeds. If you contacted me and said, my baby's a month old and they're feeding for 45 minutes, I'd be like, okay, what's going on there? Because babies should not be feeding that long at that age. Usually it's, 15 minutes, 20 minutes maybe, and then they should be done. Longer feeds are a sign that they're not transferring milk as efficiently. So we want to know, okay, what's going on there? You might want to get, a lactation consultant to kind of take a look at that feeding and see, is the baby really taking that long to feed? Or are they done in 10 minutes and they're just comfort nursing, which is very normal to do as well. But sometimes if you don't know the difference, you think they're feeding for 45 minutes. So that is something to kind of keep in mind. We should probably take a break. Holy crap.
Oh my goodness. Yes, we should.
Then we're going to talk about weight loss and weight gain.
Oh, hot topics.
And poop. All that stuff.
The hottest topic of all.
I know.
We'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. If you are struggling with sore nipples, you need pain relief fast. And when sore nipples turn to cracked nipples, forget about it. It's enough to want to call it quits. Damaged nipples can cause real problems with successfully breastfeeding your baby. Check with a lactation consultant that your baby is getting a good latch and get some Milky's Nipple Nurture Balm. Nipple Nurture Balm is formulated to soothe, protect, and heal sore or cracked nipples. This nipple balm is made with organic herbal ingredients and combined with natural moisturizers to help provide relief and to heal affected areas and even prevent cracks from reappearing. Nurture Nipple Balm alleviates the discomfort so the joy can be restored to your special bonding time. It is safe for both parent and baby, and there's no need to wipe it off before breastfeeding. Head to fairhavenhealth.com, that's FAIRHAVEN.com, and use code BADASS for 15% off of your purchase. And today's episode is also brought to you by Sarah's Chill, a company that never stops making the lives of breastfeeding parents easier. Created by a mom for moms, Sarah's Chill knows the challenges that come with the journey, including cleaning pump parts and baby bottles in some of the ickiest places. Keeping breastfeeding gear clean is super important, but it can feel almost impossible when you're away from home. With the All You Need wash bin bag, you'll always have a safe place to wash your essentials. All you need is soap and water. The wash basin includes a waterproof canvas bag, a collapsible scrub brush, a soap dispenser, and a microfiber towel. Not only are all the parts TSA friendly, but it can roll up between uses and be tossed in the wash at the end of the day. Whether it's a game-changing breast milk chiller, an epic freezer storage system, or a travel wash basin bag, this company has everything you need and want. Sarah's Chill is truly breastfeeding reimagined. Head to Sarah's Chill, that's CERESCHILL.com. You can also check them out on Instagram at Sarah's Chill. And you can use code BADASS for 15% off of your purchase. All of our sponsors and the promo codes can be found in the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from. And also over at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, you'll find our sponsor page with all of our sponsor information. And you'll find all of our other episodes. You'll find our resources page, and you will find information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne.
So let's talk about weight loss, because that always freaks people out a little bit. And in our review, she kind of alluded to the fact that the baby had lost weight in the hospital, and they mentioned that to her, and she knew that that was normal. But if you don't know that so she knew it was normal, so she didn't freak out. She was like, yeah, okay, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Day 2, the baby's losing weight. I know that happens, and it's fine. And that is how I want everybody to feel about it. I want everybody to be like, it's day 2. Babies always lose a little weight, totally normal, and it's fine, because it is. And it is normal, and it is expected, and it's what every single baby does. And you have to look at the big picture of the weight loss too. Like if it was a pretty drastic weight loss in the first 24 hours, and we can assume that a lot of that was probably fluid, like IV fluid. If you received a lot of IV fluid during labor, your baby is also getting a lot of that fluid. And they're even saying now that the 24-hour weight should be the weight that's looked at as a birth weight, not even the first weight. But it takes medical professionals a long time to change.
Like 50 years to get with the program.
It does. It takes a long time.
And then everything from there on out is based on that, which is not a correct number.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. And it's scary to think that your baby's losing all this weight and that you need to give them something other than colostrum. But it's totally okay. And they have reserves, and it's totally normal for them to lose a little bit of weight. Now, usually there's a window of providers are usually comfortable with anything under 10%. Once they get to like 10%, then they're like, okay, or they get a little bit like wonky about it. But I've definitely seen babies go a little bit lower than 10%. And as long as they're feeding fine, they're pooping and peeing okay, there's really like no reason to panic or anything like that. We want your milk to come in. So let that baby cluster feed as much as they need to, so we can get, so your milk comes in so that the baby starts feeding off of milk. but your baby is going to continue to lose weight until they've been feeding on your milk supply for about 24 hours, which is usually not until about like day 3 or day 4. So definitely expect them to still be low in weight when you go to your first pediatrician appointment. They're still usually losing a little bit of weight. Like I said, it's totally normal, especially the more IV fluids you receive, the more weight your baby drops. So it really is expected that this happens. Now, what we do is we watch for that poop, right? We feed them as much as they want to be fed. And if your baby is cluster feeding in the hospital or in those first couple days of life, like we said, that is a very normal process for them. And they do that, obviously to eat, but they also do it to be close to you. They want to be close to you. They want to feel secure. They want to feel safe. They want to be soothed. So they are doing a lot of cluster feeding. Sometimes medical professionals or nurses, if they're not really educated on this, which they're not, we know that they don't get this education in school. We know that. Then they might take that as a sign that your baby's not getting enough to eat and you have to give them formula. And that's not necessarily the truth. So,
yeah, and if that happens, and you say, I'd like to speak with a lactation consultant first.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with saying that. Nothing at all. But this is one of the reasons why people are starting to ask about harvesting their colostrum before they go to the hospital so that they can avoid situations like this. And we do have an episode on that, by the way. But I have had people ask me about that. Like somebody asked that, like we were in Indiana last weekend for Babies and Bumps. Shout out to Indiana.
Yeah.
Woo! And I was doing a seminar and somebody did ask about, what do you think about saving colostrum prior to having the baby? And this is one of the reasons why people do that. So that if the baby's not feeding well, or if the baby's losing a little bit too much weight, you've got that colostrum and you can give it to them instead of supplementing with formula. And if that's important to you, that's something that you can look into doing. Some people are fine with, that's fine. Give the baby a little bit of formula so that we can, keep their weight up until my milk comes in. But you have to be really cautious about that because you don't want to give too much formula to where the baby is going to not nurse well. So just kind of keep in mind that baby is the baby's stomach is pretty small. So in the first, few days of life, they can only hold a couple of teaspoons of fluid. It's not very much at all, which is another reason why they feed frequently, is because they're digesting, they're feeding, they're digesting, and then they're feeding again because their stomach can only hold so much volume. It's little. Their little stomachs are.
Yeah. But if they're asking you to supplement, they will be telling you to give way more than even the baby's stomach can hold.
Yeah. So you have to be really
they just do.
So if something seems off to you, because I get this a lot where people will say, I have the supplement, they wanted me to supplement and they told me to give the baby an ounce and I felt like that was a lot. And it is for a baby that's a day or two old. That is a lot. You can question that. That's okay to do. It's okay to be like, I feel like that's a lot. Is it okay if I just give them 15 milliliters, which is half an ounce?
Or you say, that's a lot. I'm going to give half an ounce.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is your
you just
baby.
tell them what you're going to do. Yeah. So that, because we want the baby to still go to the breast. And if they're too full, they're not going to go to the breast well. So we still want them to, to go to the breast, but we want them to be, if you want them to be fed while they're going to the breast, then don't overfeed them. And that's really important to remember, because I see that happening where it'd be like, oh yeah, they gave the baby, 2 ounces. It's like, oh my God, the baby's like a day and a half old. That's a lot. Like, that's a lot.
And then the baby didn't want to nurse and was conked out.
I know it, because that'll happen. And then it's like, oh yeah, then the baby slept for all these hours. And it's like, well, they're not supposed to do that.
It's not good. Yeah.
Yeah. So your baby their stomach is small. They can only hold small amounts, small volumes, which is, like I said, another reason why they eat a little bit more frequently. They're eating every 2 to 3 hours. In the hospital, they usually say, oh, feed your baby every 3 hours. That's typically what I have always experienced. And as your baby becomes a little bit more awake and alert, they might want to feed more frequently than that. And that's normal. But a lot of times people get used to that every 3 hours in the hospital, or they kind of get it in their brain, like the baby's going to eat every 3 hours because that's what they were doing in the hospital. That's what the hospital told me to do. And now they're eating every 2 hours. So what's wrong? Are they not getting enough milk? No, that's normal. Anywhere from like, we say an hour and a half to 3 hours, but it could even be shorter than that sometimes, depending on what your baby's doing.
I have never, ever known how often my children eat.
Yeah,
I mean,
they just eat.
now as they're not now as they're older, but as breastfeeding babies, I mean, I just had them at the breast.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to pee, I would like either try to hand them to somebody, try to put them down. And if they cried, I can assume now maybe they were in the middle of eating, and then I would be like, fine, you're coming to the bathroom with me. And then I'd breastfeed on the toilet. And like sometimes they would agree to going to someone else because maybe they were just sleeping. I just never paid attention to any of it.
Yeah.
I just had them nursing I just had them at the breast. And if they wouldn't go away and they cried, then I just put them back on.
If they wouldn't go away.
Yeah. If like, if my husband's like, here, I'll take the baby. And then they're like, Mah! And be like, okay, well, no, not right now.
Yeah. Well, I love it when I ask somebody, when I say to them, like, how often does the baby eat? Because that is a question that I ask. And I love it when they say, I don't know. It's just whatever. Like they just eat whenever, it's just on demand. We just feed like whatever. I don't know, like when it is.
And what day is it? What time is it?
And, and that's totally fine because that's normal. And then, on the other end of the spectrum, you get people that are very like, I don't want to say type A because I feel like that's labeling, but people that really do want to have a routine to go by, which is hard with a baby. That's a very hard thing to capture when you have a newborn because there's really not much of a routine at all.
Well, and a lot of times people are told to get on a schedule. And so then they're on the apps, keeping track of when and then going by the clock and all of that, which is just sort of a lot of work and causes a lot of anxiety.
It does cause a lot of anxiety because then it does make you wonder, is the baby not getting enough? Because they were going they were eating every 3 hours yesterday, but today they're eating every hour and a half. What's going on? Well, what's going on is maybe they're having a growth spurt. Maybe they're just having an off day. Like it's okay. But when we're tracking it so closely, it can make you feel like there's problems.
Right. Instead of just kind of going with whatever the baby's doing because they know what they're doing.
I mean,
they're going to do that when they're 2 and 3 too, if you're still breastfeeding.
I know, or even just eating.
Like some days some days they'll eat all day and you'll be like, oh my God, we're going to go broke.
Somebody asked me that recently, like about a baby being sick. And this was an older baby, like a year old. Like if they're sick and they don't eat a lot, like, is that okay? I'm like, yeah, because you don't want to eat a lot when you're sick. Like they're not going to starve.
No, they just don't feel good.
Yeah. It's like they make up for it. It's totally okay. We're talking about the older babies at this point. Younger babies, we do like to make sure they're eating, but
yeah. And they
like toddlers,
yeah.
Good luck getting a meal down them half the time. Chasing them around with food. They're just like, want to be busy, want to be doing something every minute. I don't know. So pooping. Now, we're going to talk about pooping because it's an important part of feeding. And why is it an important part of feeding? Because it tells you how much your baby's eating. Like, this is how we track. People always ask, how do I know my baby is getting enough? And it's because of the pooping. We know they're getting enough when they're pooping and peeing. If you're changing a lot of dirty diapers and a lot of wet diapers, then your baby's getting enough to eat. That's pretty much the bottom line. Like, that's what we see. And their poop changes. So from day one, you've got that really dark poop, that dark meconium poop. It's like tar.
Yeah.
Doesn't smell. You can't hear it coming out. And it's awful to clean up. But once they're past that, after like a day or two, then their poop turns a little bit more green. It's a little bit more of a normal poop consistency. And then it turns to this like yellow, like Winnie the Pooh yellow, soft, seedy poop. And that's what normal breastfed baby poop is going to look like until you give them something other than breast milk. And that usually happens by like day 4 as your milk is coming in. That's what your baby's poop is going to change to. If your baby's poop is still dark by day 5, then that's a red flag. We want to make sure, like, is the baby transferring enough milk? What's going on with these feedings? Because poop should not still be dark by day 5. Everything should have transitioned by then. So that is definitely a red flag for you. Pain with feeds is a red flag too. You shouldn't have pain that lasts throughout a feeding. Normal latch pain is when your baby like latches on and you might feel a little bit of like tenderness or sensitivity, and then it should go away within like 30 or 60 seconds. You don't want that pain to last. And you might feel like the tug, but that might feel strange, but it shouldn't feel painful. You shouldn't have like pinchy pain or like digging pain, nothing like that. And everything should be comfortable as your baby is feeding. If you have pain that lasts through the feed, that's a red flag that we need to look at that latch because something's going on there. It shouldn't be painful, and it's not normal. And if it's painful, then it's not going well. I'll have people contact me and be like, how are the feeds going? Oh, feedings are going great. He's doing great. He's gaining weight. Everything's great, but it's really painful. Well, then it's not great. It's not great if it's painful and he's not doing well. Something's going on there that we need to fix. So that is all kind of like things to look for and things to expect in those first couple days of your baby's life.
That's awesome. Lots of chaos. I remember that first day home with Jack.
Oh my God.
It was just like standing in the living room. All of us just not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
All of us
I remember,
like, what the fuck do we do?
Yeah. I remember thinking like, this is not the baby I had in the hospital. Cause it was like, in the hospital, they're so angelic and they just sleep and you wake them up for feeds and you know, and then you get them home and they're like, wah! And it's like, whose baby is this?
They really are crying all night. Yeah. Yeah.
I really thought that to myself. Like, this is not the same baby. What did I do? What happened? It was really scary for a little while there.
Yeah.
But then you get it figured out and it's okay.
Yeah. We're just expect the chaos.
Expect some chaos. But hopefully we made it a little bit easier by answering some feed questions for you. But just expect some just normal baby chaos. That's it.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.